And we're live.
Yes, we are on this week's high90cast. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Erik Hess and
Bob Vanderklay.
Yeah, he can say his own name. So yeah, today's topics. We're gonna talk. Talk mice. We're gonna talk keyboards a little bit, and we're gonna talk about me going back on everything I said about the iPad. So isn't that awesome?
I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm sure everybody does. All right, so let's first start out with the Logitech MX Master.
Yeah.
So I have been actually. I don't think we could talk about the MX Master without talking about what we came from almost completely, which is the MX Anywhere.
Yes.
Is that it? So this has been my gold standard mouse for probably. Is it almost like 10 years? I mean,
as long as it's been out.
It may be that long. Yeah, since it came out. I probably had 4 of them or so. And it works on glass. It's small. It's got the right amount of buttons.
Powered by 2 AA's.
2 AA's, yep. So not.
It's big enough to use on the desktop. Still small enough to throw in a bag for.
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to say about the MX Master is how much I love the MX Anywhere. And the second thing I'm going to say is I'm back using the MX Anywhere. So why don't you talk about the MX Master, because you had a much, much more pleasant experience with it than I did.
Well, obviously with the MacBook coming out, the need for a Bluetooth mouse skyrocketed. I mean, with one port, including charging, you're kind of left without anything else to put in it. And of course, up until now, pretty much Bluetooth mice have been horrible. I mean,
yeah, and that's the one weakness of the MX Anywhere is no matter how great a mobile mouse it is, this is the mouse with the standard Logitech little mini dongle,
which is
thing.
Great, and that's fine. But there's no place for that on the new MacBook.
Right. And so that was kind of what prompted you. It came out at almost exactly the same time, coincidentally. Exactly. I think not, but yeah.
So between that and of course it's got the thing that everyone's adding to seemingly all these Bluetooth keyboards, which is multiple device support.
Right.
So including a dongle support. You can use any combination of 3 Bluetooth devices or, one of their dongles.
Which is awesome.
Fantastic. It's anywhere again, so it works on glass and everything. It's got their standard switchable scroll wheel.
And that's been a weakness of other Bluetooth mice as well, is you've been able to get something that works on glass, or you've been able to get something that's Bluetooth, but there haven't been a lot of options for both.
Bluetooth has always seemed to be like the second tier of mice.
Right.
It's the flagship models never have Bluetooth, and I get it because Bluetooth is kind of a hard communication channel to work with. But on paper, this is the right mouse.
Well, and you're using it still, and it's still your like, it's your desktop mouse, it's your everything kind of mouse.
I think it's too big to carry, though.
Okay.
This one, obviously, if it was prompted by the MacBook, it's probably a really poor companion for the MacBook, because for all the slimness and smallness of the MacBook, this isn't going into my bag.
Right.
It's and huge. This is a desktop class mouse.
That's one of the complaints that I have specifically is that, I don't know, looking at them both right here, the MX Anywhere, which was a great size, not the smallest mouse you can get, but a great size for all around, it looks like 60% the size of this thing in footprint and about 50% of it in depth. So, but they also did a couple other things with this mouse. First of all, they emphasized build quality. They're like, they have like videos and stuff on their website showing like carving the prototypes out of blocks of wood, which is admirable. And if Logitech isn't doing that, I don't know who would. And I have to say that over the last year, the build quality on the Anywheres have dropped substantially.
Yeah, you have the glossy
This one I'm holding up here right now is the glossy shiny one, and so that's less optimal. It's the glossiness is not the problem. It's just the iteration. But I know I've had decent reliability out of mine, but Mark, your brother, who's our producer, has gone through like 3 in a year.
Yeah.
So and again, another big fan of the Anywhere. So it sounds like they're not putting the resources into this thing. that they have. And that actually, the MX Master is a fantastic mouse. I mean, it
great.
feels great. It looks great. I'll tell you.
Lots of buttons, except for.
Well, except for, yeah. So they've done some interesting things with the buttons. The first is, well, let's talk about that scroll wheel. So it's got a really cool, like, inertial scroll wheel. The MX Anywhere is nice because you can toggle between, like, completely free scrolling and kind of ratcheted. And that Master is the first one that actually, like, just roll. You can if you roll slowly, it's ratcheted, and then if you just flick it, it goes into free.
You can also remap it to any of the buttons can toggle that mode manually.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
If you don't care about that,
that's kind of nice. So that was a reason why I use middle click a lot, and the Anywhere has a middle button behind that I always remap to middle click, because if you tap on the scroll wheel, it's gonna toggle, and the Master now
actually has a real
button that you can actually trigger in addition to a button behind it. It's got a weird vertical scroll wheel on the side that can be used for horizontal scrolling or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
I have mine mapped to volume.
Yeah, there's two little buttons behind it that are kind of like the forward back buttons, but they're kind of half segmented, so they're like on a diagonal.
Yeah,
it's hard to say like which one you're clicking at any time, is my experience.
Yeah, I don't have them mapped to anything just because I don't feel I can tell which one's
like
which.
reliably click on either of them. And then the one other button is there's like a pad under your thumb on the thumb rest.
Yep.
And you can click on that, and that gets us to a really interesting thing.
The great compromise that Logitech made in this mouse was to get rid of the tilt wheel.
Right. So the scroll wheel does not actually like rock back and forth. A lot of people used to use that, I guess, for horizontal scrolling. I never did, because horizontal scrolling, ever since the Magic Trackpad came out, I've been using the Magic Trackpad on my desk just for scrolling purposes. I think that's really, really nice. But I use that almost exclusively. So I use all my buttons on my mouse for spaces, like for mission control, whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah.
So like I used that tilt left and right to swap between spaces, and then I use the button under my thumb, it's usually the forward button because that's the easiest to click, as basically show me all spaces, show me all apps.
Yep.
So without the rocker on that, now you're either left with using the forward back buttons to switch between spaces, or they have this kind of thing where you hold down the thumb button and then
any
move.
button. Again, it's completely customizable.
Yeah, it's customizable. So
but yes, there's what they call gesture mode.
Right, gesture mode. So out of the box, you do that, and then you swipe the entire mouse left and right.
Yeah.
And boy, does that not work well.
It's weird. I don't think I could ever get used to it.
Like I had to move my mouse like 6 inches to get to the next space.
Like you, when I use multiple spaces mapped to the mouse tilt, that's just how my finger is.
Yeah,
trained.
absolutely.
And the truth is, I've just stopped using spaces. It's one of those habits I always fall out of. I want to set up separate spaces. I want to have all my terminals on one. Programming versus browsing. And the truth is, I never use spaces. So it's not a deal breaker for me, but if I was having the spaces, that it would be a huge deal breaker.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely think that the MX Master is not the only one that's been out without a tilt. The tilt wheel is the tilt wheel's dying, which makes me really sad because I use the heck out of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm back on all my Anywheres. I take them with me when I need a mouse, and I have them on all my computers. I don't know. This is going to be another one that they pry from, my dead fingers.
Or until it fails.
Or until it fails and they don't make any more of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
I'm really hoping they'll come out with a portable version of this. Perhaps adding back in its tilt wheel.
That would be cool. That would be really nice. I'd like that. I mean, because that's clearly modeled after their bigger desktop mice. So, it's understandable. So, in other interface-related news, you have sold your Happy Hacking keyboard. So for those of our listeners who do not know what the Happy Hacking keyboard is, why don't you give us an overview?
It's a mechanical keyboard. It uses Torpray switches. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that horribly.
Yeah, it's the internet. You shouldn't have to say anything.
It's kind of the hybrid capacitive domed spring switches.
Yeah. Nice feel, no real audible click, right?
No, it's a subtle tactile feel. It's one of those you kind of have to use it for a while before you get it.
Got it.
It's the other big thing about it is it's a very minimal keyboard. It's smaller than 10 keyless, and it has a very curious layout, supposedly optimized for programming.
Yeah, so it is a 10 keyless keyboard without arrow keys or home or any of that stuff.
Exactly.
Pure, and then it does not also have a function row either, right?
No.
So no function row, meaning that escape is replaced by tilde is replaced by escape. Sorry.
Yes.
Caps lock is replaced by control.
Yep. Backspace is mapped to. I'm trying to think where it actually normally is on a keyboard.
It's in the upper right. I mean,
yeah, backspace is directly above return.
Right.
And then tilde and the backslash are where backspace normally would be.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's basically mapped on, I think, Solaris keyboards.
Okay, that makes sense. So you decided that you had one of these. It is not a wireless keyboard. It was hooked up to your desktop, and you used it for probably 9 months, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
June. Bought it last June. The layout was frustrating, but not having arrow keys was frustrating.
Right.
But the feel of it was actually so nice. I'd always come back to it.
Yeah, the arrow keys are actually mapped to they're modifier some other key in order to do it.
Yeah. And it's not I could deal with function WASD, function, HK, or JKL.
Right. Function Vim style, function WASD.
Some sort of standard arrow keys. It's actually in some sort of diamond formation. I can't think of where it would be. I think it's over PL.
Yeah.
So, whatever. But you could get used to it, but it doesn't leverage any other standard for non-standard arrow keys.
And let's talk about getting used to it, because getting used to a keyboard that you can't have anywhere is kind of a big deal. Like if you are you can't use it on your laptop unless you take it with you with your laptop, and it's a smallish keyboard, but it's deep. It's as deep as a mechanical keyboard would be.
Yeah, it changes your bag choice, no question. And
not wireless, so can't use it on like an iPad or something.
The arrow keys are fine. The caps lock and control thing is fine. I always map my caps lock to control anyway. But the deletes, the deletes and backslash, tilde thing. I actually prefer that layout greatly. But anytime I sit down on a laptop, I'm broken.
Yeah,
and that is the problem.
You're remapping your brain.
Yeah, and as soon as you admit you're going to be using a laptop, you kind of got to give in to the standard layout.
And that brings, that I think that brings me in an interesting direction, because the one thing that I did take away from that is I started using, about the same time you got that, I started swapping caps lock for control, which I had scoffed at for a long time and really enjoyed it. Especially on a Mac where control is not used as much for primary system functions.
Yep.
It was great because when I was doing, terminal stuff, it was awesome. And yet it instantly like broke my brain in the sense that now, it was so easy to map control there, and it was so intuitive to have control there, that it became difficult for me to use the control where it's mapped everywhere else. And so that basically limited me only to using systems for, at least for terminal work, only systems where I could remap that key.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty decent terminal apps out there for iOS. The phone's obviously different, but the iPad is not necessarily. Where I was, basically engaging caps lock when I really wanted to use control, and it was kind of a challenge. So you, since you sold your Happy Hacking, you've been going back to the K11, which has long been a standby for us.
It's literally now, I think, the only keyboard I have left. I've been purging my keyboards.
Yeah,
the long story short.
That's another story.
The ultimate goal is to build my own. Our long-term friend and listener, Potato Wire, and I have been going back and forth on, optimal keyboard layouts, knowing that you have to pick a single layout. You can't afford to swap back and forth. It's too painful. And maybe
right.
if I was younger, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I need a keyboard that I'm familiar with. So
yeah.
I'm going all in on something that's, based on the standard keyboard with additional functionality.
Got it. So you basically does that include caps lock, or are you keeping control under the pinky?
Caps lock is control. It's always been control.
Okay. So
also the nice thing about building your own keyboard is you can remap the keys to whatever you want at a hardware level.
Well, yeah. So that's it. So my challenge then would be, with using that is if you need something that's like Bluetooth only or Bluetooth preferred, like say, a laptop that maybe doesn't have any ports but one crazy USB-C port, hypothetically.
That sounds like a requirement that's been added to the list.
Yeah, I guess it is. So
that's the best part about custom hardware.
We'll have Potato Wire on to talk about custom hardware keyboards and building all those on another show. But that's where you're going. That's the direction you're headed.
Yeah.
Well, it's been kind of an interesting time of reconsideration too, and this plays into it for me because I am back. I'm back to the iPad now,
which
explodes your brain. I know it explodes my brain too,
yeah.
And that's fine. It's really more of a when I realized how much I'd broken myself by putting control where caps lock is. I started reconsidering a lot of things because one of the reasons why I had a hard time doing stuff on an iPad is, in theory, all I'd really need is a terminal emulator on an iPad, and I could use Vim, I could do all that stuff, no problem at all. But I had so warped myself into using control as caps lock that I was being a child and refusing to use it. So when I started rethinking that, I started rethinking a lot of other things. The one other thing that I had allowed to get, I think, in my way of using an iPad. I'm a keyboard guy, so I have to have a keyboard even on my touch devices. Not with the exception of my phone, but I mean, if I'm going to have something that's big enough for me to do, writing on, I want maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a quote unquote full size keyboard, but it needs to be big enough that the actual keyboard layout, the basic keyboard layout is there. And we all remember the dark days of netbooks when like right shift keys were an endangered species because they were always trying to cram arrows in there and the right shift key would be moved all around. That was hard. So I'm willing to admit that I have some keyboard problems that I may need therapy to address. But the other thing that I kind of did to myself was I got the iPad mini as soon as it came out, and that was my iPad pretty much from the moment that came out.
Yeah.
And I think I let that get in the way of iPad. Like for me, so iPad mini was a device now that I couldn't really use a keyboard with unless I carried a bulky external separate keyboard.
Nobody has fit a good keyboard into an iPad mini. It's just too small.
It's just too small. And so, and you can't, and I couldn't type on the screen. Some people are happy with thumb keyboards on an iPad, and I'm just not, at least for long form. If I'm going to write with a thumb keyboard, I want to write on my phone because I think that's a much better thumb keyboard, especially now that the screens are bigger on the iPhones. I think that's a much better than trying to do split. I've never thought that iOS handled split keyboards well with where it places the input field, sometimes below your thumbs, and like, what am I looking at? And that's just never been a thing for me. So, in the spirit of reconsideration, I sold our old. Well, we're trying to sell that's another eBay story, but we're trying to sell our old Yoga 2, and in advance of that, I decided to go in on an iPad Air 2. First, I was being
huge fan of it.
Yes, first I was being foolishly frugal and got it without the cell connection. That I reconsidered that within 2 days, 4 days. Yeah, something like that. Went back, traded it in. The folks at the Apple Store were very happy to have swapped me out for something new. That was great. I think they understand that we have a problem, much like people's bartenders understand that they have a problem. But we're gonna let that go. But yeah, and the first thing I did with it was slap it in a Zag Folio keyboard case.
Now that's a fantastic keyboard. I love Zag keyboards.
Yep.
And this case is actually, for a case with keyboard, one of the smaller ones.
It really is. It's awesome.
It's got a great hinge. Now you can't fold that back and use it, quote unquote, in tablet mode.
I cannot. Now you had gotten a clam case.
Yes, I had one with
for your Air.
I had
2.
one. Yeah, I got one for the Air 2. I'd used it previously with, I guess it's the iPad 4, and I love that case.
It's beautiful.
It's
made out of steel
and
or
plastic.
aluminum or whatever it is, and plastic. But that being said, it's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's heavy. it's ridiculously heavy. I mean, there's, I don't know if it's the case with the current one, but I know the one with the iPad 4 had counterweights in the keyboard section of it to keep it from, flipping backwards.
Which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, this thing is literally as heavy as a laptop.
Yeah.
Which, for me, I've never been able to make the iPad a workable, work device. I've just never been able to put myself in a situation where I could do anything, or I felt I could do something constructive with the iPad. So, well, I agree with you. If I were to put anything long form into an iPad, I would have to have a keyboard. In fact, me, anytime I get an iPad, I immediately buy a keyboard for it.
You really do, yeah.
And then it sits unused.
It really does, yeah. It's kind of funny.
Only because, like I said, I know I need a keyboard, but not for the iPad, just because I'm not doing work on that.
Yeah, and I mean, so the obvious question is, why instead did I not go for the MacBook like you did?
Yes.
And the big reason for me, and I don't know whether it's a legitimate reason or not, but I loathe trackpads. Even the super awesome Force Touch trackpad, which is the finest trackpad that I've ever used and is awesome. Sitting like on the couch and using a trackpad to move through, say, a text document or whatever is, to me, the only thing worse than trying to manipulate text with a touch screen, which is not great. But, for me, if I'm going to have something on my lap, and I have not been a lap worker, but, my lifestyle is now no longer supporting sometimes. Like when my kid gets sick, I need to be able to sit down and do some work in front of Paw Patrol. And I have to say that doing that on a laptop has been annoying in a way that I really, really, I don't know. Again, I probably need therapy, but we're going to set that aside for now. That'll be a different show.
I agree with you 100% on the trackpad. I hate trackpads. I hate touchscreen for text input. I mean, for me, it's a mouse or nothing.
Yeah.
When it comes to text thing, I find when I'm working, I actually use the mouse very little.
Yeah.
I mean, arrow keys are much more important to me, and I'm totally a Vim heretic in the sense I actually really, really, really like arrow keys.
Yeah.
Real arrow keys. So.
Which must have been a pain with the happy.
So the whole, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's nice as I like. I liked all the layout for everything else, but yeah, the arrow keys just broke me. I thought that would train me on Vim, but no.
Yeah, I get that.
So for me, trackpad versus touchscreen doesn't matter. Those are just horrible methods of doing text. And for me, when I'm doing quote unquote focused laptop work, I'm not switching between windows. I'm not doing a lot of things. I'm full screen apps, alt tab between them. And
yeah. And I completely get that as well, especially since I realized too that if I am sitting on the couch in front of Paw Patrol, the chances of me being able to do anything other than a little bit of writing or perhaps some, social media or interaction, via Slack or email is just about zero.
Yeah.
So that was where I started to think, okay, if I were to rethink this, if I were to rethink what I'm doing from the ground up based on the fact that I have to do something useful on a couch in snippets of possibly 2, maybe 3 minutes when I'm lucky.
1.
Yeah. The myth of multitasking, of course, is that you can multitask, and I can tell you that I have deeply learned that there is no multitasking. There is just quick task switching. So, especially on the couch in front of Paw Patrol. But yeah. So all of this has caused me to take a look at things that that I knew before or had been explained before by such illustrious people as like Mac Drifter about how Gabe's always talking about how awesome editorial is, and I played with it a lot and was like, this is great. I don't have a use for it now. I got a use for it now. Workflow, which I did not have much of a use for before. Now, wow, I can run shell scripts, secure shell scripts remotely. So one big challenge that I've had is how do I edit remote files? Let's just say it's a static blog. How do you do static blogging when part of your workflow involves Git?
Yep.
And the answer is that you have a staging server that can auto pull from a Git repository, and then I run
shell script to
and then I run an editing. I've always had like an editing DigitalOcean instance where I was keeping my own kind of working version of our site or of our other sites that we work on. So now I can either pull down a file and work on it in Textastic, put it back up there, and then with one tap of a shortcut on the home screen, run an entire git commit on my DigitalOcean instance, which will auto pull it to
the staging server.
Yeah. So that we can basically preview it right there, and that way I don't even have to run a web server on my DigitalOcean instance. It is just literally a remote place for that stuff to live, so that I'm not editing on what should be a pure Git version of our stuff.
So that allows you to leverage all the good iPad editors out there.
It does, and there's tons.
Yeah.
There's tons. And transmit. So what I'll do is, as long as I have something that'll let me write in, say, Markdown, pure Markdown, now I just use the transmit share sheet to push it up to our DigitalOcean instance, and then when I'm ready, then I do the Git pull, which puts it on our staging server. So it's a little Rube Goldberg. I mean, it definitely is, because the shorter path would definitely be to have my normal workflow, which is a local version of basically a local version of the repository on my computer, my laptop, my desktop, do all the editing there and do the push straight to GitHub from there. But I mean, I love the MacBook. That'd be really cool to do. But the other thing that the MacBook does not have, that the iPad does have now, and I realize is kind of a real nice to have, is cell connection.
And that's it right there. I mean, my question to you on this is, what does the iPad do better? And that is a huge one.
It is.
That alone may be a deal breaker.
It is a huge one. I mean, I think it's a massive one. So yeah, it's and one other thing that I've found has become more and more a key to just doing things on the internet: Touch ID. I have a Touch ID addict. So just being able to,
absolutely convenient.
I am so sick of, passcodes, and I don't want to leave my devices laying around unlocked, because I mean, we've got lots of information on it. So I can type my 1Password passcode, or I can just use my thumb. I could type a passcode on my iPad, or I could just use my thumb. And that's it. On any MacBook that I had, I'd have to log in every time.
Well, you know me, you've seen me try to use Touch ID on my phone, and it works 50% of the time. I don't know what happened to my fingerprints.
Yeah, it was, I think, when you sanded them all down the heist thing. Yeah. Oh, we're not supposed to talk about it? Okay.
Previous occupation.
Okay, yeah, we'll let that go. But I had problems.
It doesn't work for me. I mean,
I had problems at the beginning, and now it's been like 95
and perhaps
or
maybe
higher
I should just
percent.
go retrain.
That's probably not a bad idea.
It actually works better on the iPad for me, but on the phone, less than 50%.
Do you get like stick-on fingerprints or something, right?
True.
Don't they sell those?
Yeah, lead press-on thumbprints.
Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's been
Those
huge.
are great features, but again, I cannot imagine a situation where that workflow is better than just working on my local copy with Sublime Text or Atom and just doing it. To me, working on the iPad is like, I imagine it's like working on something in a glove box. It's like I am so detached from the things I'm trying to manipulate. It just drives me crazy. It's like I want my files. I want to be able to touch them. And
I get that, and I don't disagree. And I am trying to mentally remap control to its normal spot, so I can start working in prompt, which is great, and supports Powerline font characters now.
Mosh.
They don't support Mosh. I know.
Please find a way to support Mosh.
I know. Mosh is awesome. Mobile shell, way better than secure shell if you're doing something like on an iPad. And so I've successfully used Vim as successfully as I ever used Vim. I've successfully used Vim through prompt, and that's great too. That's the real reason I have the DigitalOcean instance.
The truth is, honestly, if I was better at Vim, I would probably be way more comfortable on an iPad.
Yeah.
Because again, I would have the cell connectivity, and then all I would need is something like prompt.
Well, and Mark just weighed in. The other app that has been huge for him in just doing our daily work is Navicat. So prompt and Navicat is, for those who don't know, it's primarily a MySQL database editor.
It now works. It's everything.
It's everything. So it's a full-on database editor.
Yeah.
I mean, we use it on the desktop forever, and now it's got a really functional iPad app.
And they store all your connection settings in the cloud, so you can. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I was doing more database stuff, again, that would be another huge draw.
Yeah. So it's a process, and I'm probably wrong to be doing it this way. But it's fun at this point. So it's fun broken right now.
Yes.
And so I will stay with the fun broken. And it's not like I sit down to my desk and, it's not like I sit down to my desk and spend the workday on the iPad. That is not actually, this is kind of my mobile machine.
But if it's better, you should.
If it's better, I should. And I don't know that
and I'm picking on you, but you know me. I have purchased 3 keyboards for my iPad Air 2 and returned all 3. So I will probably continue to do that because, again, I still feel like the iPad should do more. Maybe, again, I'm...
Well, and you have a different iPad workflow. Like, you use the iPad for a ton of entertainment, and we've discussed that
iPad's
before.
A consumption device. Yeah,
right.
And it is my e-reader.
For me, I don't use it for almost any entertainment other than perhaps, if I'm sitting on the couch and I'm reading like a Kindle book or something.
Yeah.
But that's just, or documentation, which is nice. That being said, I actually, so for me, having this thing attached to a keyboard full time is like a plus. It's a huge plus. It's a great stand. And I've never really enjoyed having just a flat, tablet flopping around in my lap because you're the stand.
Yep.
Your hands are the stand or your legs are the stand. And this gives me just a little bit more stability. So, I don't know. It's definitely a work in progress, and I will definitely report on my utter failure, which is almost inevitable on this. Meanwhile, it allowed me to buy other cool things. And so one of the things that I got, which I liked way more than I expected, is the BookBook Travel Journal for iPad. And this is if you've had 12 South products before, it's like their BookBook. It's one of their BookBook lines, which basically wraps.
This is the first one that is the right proportions. For
I think
book.
so. Yeah, it actually looks like a book.
book.
But I've had for most of my laptops up until about 2 years ago, I got the BookBook for the laptop. Never got it for the iPad. Got it for the phone occasionally. And usually what it does is it's a really pretty way of surrounding your really super slim, awesome Apple product with a huge bulky book.
Oh gosh.
And it looks gorgeous, and it's really good for security, but it's one of those ideas that just is, it's too awesome an idea not to try, and it's too...
So what do you got in there?
Yeah, so instead the travel journal's different because it offers a sleeve for your iPad plus a ton of like pockets and strappy stuff. So my mobile workstation thing now has let's see, I got headphones in the pocket. Those are the really nice Bose QC20 Plus. Is that what it is? Did I remember that right?
Okay. Noise canceling.
Noise canceling, yeah. The Bose.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've got a military CAC card reader from Thursby, which is pretty awesome and necessary for my Navy job. That allows you to use the smart cards that we use to log in. Let's see. I've got a really awesome Anchor battery pack, which has just ridiculous amounts of. It's a 2,000 milliamp hour battery. Yeah, we'll talk that in power sometimes.
Yes.
I stole your Anchor two plug USB port thingy, and you can buy another one in black now, or rather, I shipped you another one in black to pay you for it because I needed it.
Still waiting that.
Yeah, and then it'll come today. Just be patient.
With my watch.
Prime. No, your watch is not coming today. Good luck with that. And a few cables, and it's great, and it's just about the right size. And the only thing, it's kind of like a bag without a handle. And at first, I thought, oh my gosh, why would I ever want like a briefcase type work bag without a handle? And it's actually surprisingly useful without the handle. It's just a freaking book.
It's cool.
Yeah, you're jealous.
You're extraordinarily jealous.
You're jealous. And it does, for the record, it does fit with the Zag Folio. It's a little tight, but it fits. So, it's good.
Cool.
Well, should we, hang up for this week, and then next week I'll come back crying and telling you how I was totally wrong, and I'm going to start using the MX Master with the MacBook because I'm,
I look forward to that.
I was so wrong.
Yes.
I've been wrong before. I can be wrong again. So, anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll catch up with you guys next week.
Next week.
See ya.
See ya.